Welcome to the Tarot Tapestry, a weaving of self-discovery, where three tarot mavens put their heads and hearts together to offer their wisdom and insights about the tarot. We hope that you find this helpful in your personal journey to self-discovery and growth.
Join us as we explore ways to use tarot for self-reflection and self-correction.
Together, we'll discover new ways to use tarot to weave threads of understanding into the tapestry of your life.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Tarot Tapestry with the Tarot Trio. We have all three of us back now because Linda's back from her big adventure. We missed you very much. And we are getting ready for the new moon in Gemini. And Geminis are known for their quick wit, their multiple interests that they want to do all at the same time. It can sometimes be a little hard to get them to slow down and finish something and let it be good enough. They can be a little perfectionist. They also have a bit of a reputation as having a gift for fiction, and that's not to say that they like to lie, but some of them, use their gift of gab to sort of selectively share facts when they have a certain objective or viewpoint. This is a really good time to socialize, hang out with your friends, catch up with everyone, to see your siblings, if you've got any brothers or sisters. Geminis have very curious minds. This is a great time to make a reading list and to, read more maybe, and to communicate. Just to communicate how you feel and make connections with people. So that's what I've got. Who wants to go next?
I like that. My co-teacher is a Gemini. And as I was, I know a little bit about Gemini, but as I was exploring more, I'm like, oh my God, this is her. It's like to a T. And it's very like they love having conversations. Like they just love to exchange ideas. They love to talk. They excel in like areas of like teaching or writing, going back to what you said, Angie, any kind of job where they might be doing a lot of speaking. They're very curious, like you said, inquisitive. They like to learn a lot about things, and they need a lot of mental stimulation. Like they thrive off of that mental stimulation, and they do juggle a lot at one time. And sometimes that can be to their detriment because they want to do all of these things, but then they run out of time or things fall apart because you can only focus on so many things at one time, right? And maybe like some of the other challenges that they might face is struggling to follow through on commitments because maybe it's just like there's so many things that they want to do. I think I can relate to that. But I am one to do that. Like I'll want to do all these things and try to commit, and then I just can't do it.
We've all got it in
You
here
know,
somewhere. We've all got Gemini in our
there you
chart
go. All
somewhere.
right. I like that. I like that. Some other things is they like to analyze things. Sometimes it can be like a little too much analyzing of stuff. And they're fun, like you said, Angie, like they're sociable, they're fun. They enjoy going out and having a good time. They enjoy socializing, and they're fun. They're fun people to be around. So that's all I have for Gemini. Linda, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I have a couple of friends who are Gemini, and I'm a Taurus, so that to me they're kind of diametrically opposed, but they're to they do a lot. They do a lot, and sometimes they've got so much going on, and they are thinking about things so much, and they're trying to work on this platform or that platform or the other platform or get the message out here, there, and everywhere. And we were chit chatting a little bit before we started recording, and I just said sometimes they just make me tired. It's like all the stuff that they're doing. It's just like, really, I would just be, and I think I do a lot of stuff, in my life and have a lot of plans and, goals that I want to achieve. But, recently I have backed off on my social media. And so, I'm finding it interesting because, you know, one of my friends who was kind of part of what I would call a lesbian power couple, and I knew them here in Pueblo, and now they live in they kind of retired and live in La Vida, which is south of here. But they just are on every social media platform, and as they've kind of retired, but yet they still do consulting and they do it's business kind of stuff, and they do the spiritual thing. And one of the one who's the Gemini did have about with cancer, and so she is all about kind of putting her message in regards to that and how she got her and how she was and how she treated that, and how she's been very successful. She's cancer free. She's very forward about talking about it and getting it out, and not hiding it. And I think that's another thing about Gemini is that they want to be forward with their communications and not. My other friend as well, she's had a lot of stuff going on in her family, and it's things that she's learned about, like epigenetics and past trauma that carries forward, and she's trying very hard to work on that moving it forward in her family, and so the generational thing doesn't continue. And and I give kudos to her for that. And so I think that they're very open. They're very open to ideas of change and things that, like you said, make them curious. And I think when this new moon is coming in, I think a lot of that energy from the Gemini is going to be boiling around. So if you suddenly feel like you want to have a conversation with somebody, you just feel chatty, or you something catches your eye and you think, oh, what's that? I'm going to follow this little rabbit hole down the way because you're interested in something. That kind of energy is the energy for the new moon in Gemini that's going to take you into a different direction than you wouldn't normally go. So yeah, that's kind of what I have.
We're also winding down from a full moon in Scorpio, right, to Gemini. And Scorpio is all about like uncovering truth. Some you don't
Yeah.
really want to talk about. So, it's kind of it can be kind of a heavy time. So Gemini is
Yeah.
like a breath of fresh air after
Right.
that, I think.
But still, I mean, the
Mhm.
Scorpio uncovers everything, and then the
Yeah.
Gemini is like, oh no, let's talk about it. Let's
Yeah.
process it.
So, let's talk about it. Let's integrate it. Let's organize everything we've learned and figure out
Right.
what we're going to do with it now. And
Yeah.
what do we like? What do we don't like?
And
Yeah.
I
So,
love that because that like brings me right to something else that I wanted to talk about,
oh,
which
cool.
is the tarot card for Gemini is the lovers. So even if you think about this full moon in Scorpio and then Gemini, two opposite, opposing energies, right? And we also know that Gemini is the twins, right? So when I was exploring the lovers card, um, I was looking at it more from, I interpret the lovers cards as more about choices that you make. And they could be choices relating to relationships that you have, whether they're romantic relationships or not, about connections that you make with others and the choices that you make within those relationships and how you kind of I want to say like harmonize that relationship, how you can make sure that you and the other person are mutually benefiting from this relationship with one another, as opposed to maybe one being more dominant and one being more like submissive, maybe even thinking about like an interdependence versus a codependency relationship, and how, when you're in these relationships, you need to be able to balance the two, and how can you integrate them so that you are actually doing things that are in alignment with who you're becoming, or who you want to become, and when you think about the twins and you can have two You know, you can have identical twins, you can have fraternal twins, but whatever it is, they have their own separate identities, right? You know, and their own, they learn that although we may be the same, we may look alike, we still have different identities. And how am I going to maintain my own identity so that people don't think that I'm this person? You know, if you think about like identical twins, you know, or such. So I loved the idea of the lovers and like dealing with dualities in your life. And that was kind of like my focus with the new moon in Gemini, is looking at myself and thinking about, you know, dualities. And me, it's more of that fight sometimes, or the tension that you have sometimes with your mind and like your heart. Like what are my passions, what are the things that I want to do, and what does my thoughts and my thinking, um how does it affect that, you know, and trying to balance or harmonize
Well,
those
the
two
the other
things.
thing that this new moon energy is good for is to like, and kind of working with that, Kate, is, you know, we all tell ourselves stories about how, you know, how we came to have our habits, or why we do the things we do, or whatever, because this happened in my childhood, or whatever the stories are. And this is a really good time of energy to rewrite a story. If you've been telling yourself, oh, I can't do this because of blah, 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 or I'm too scared to try this, or I shouldn't, you know, this is a perfect time to sit down and rewrite that story and say, no, I've been in this cycle of keeping myself, holding myself back from something that I want to do. I'm going to write a new story. I'm going to make a different ending for this, and I'm going to go forward and create a new path for myself. Not totally blowing your whole life up, but, you know, maybe there's a goal that you've been trying to get to and you haven't been able to figure out a way because you've just been holding yourself back. And now you can make another story and say, and then she went forward and did it, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Geminis are really
So,
enthusiastic and
yeah.
always open to trying something new. So
Yeah,
maybe tap into
exactly. And
some
I
of
think
that.
that energy is
Um,
it's a good time to do that. Think about something that maybe you've been just holding yourself back from, and
yeah,
say, I'm done with that. I'm going forward.
try to look at because fear and excitement can feel very similar in your body. And so just try to maybe explore a little bit and
Exactly.
see how you can maybe be excited. It's always kind of scary to go out of your comfort zone, but
Sure.
you know, you can find ways that you're like, okay, this is a little bit scary for me, but I'm going to stick my toe in the water.
Yeah,
And then
like when
that
we
Gemini
when we
enthusiasm just kind of take you where you need to go.
when we got to Barcelona, and my cousin met us at the airport, which was really nice. It was so nice to have somebody meet us at the airport there. And then we went to get I had bought these Barcelona cards that had, you know, like you could get public transportation and that kind of thing. So they gave us the cards for the subway and the buses and everything. And so then we went down to get on the subway to go. She wanted to go to where she was gonna go to school to get her keys for her apartment, and then it was not too far from where we were staying. And so we got on, and she just went on the subway. I got on the subway doors closed, boom, and there's my grandson on the other side. And
Oh,
like,
oh,
sorry.
oh no.
So we were like, okay. So we got down to the next stop, and I said, just get off. We're going to go down to where the thing comes in from the tunnel, and we're just going to sit there so that when it comes, the train that he gets on, he'll see us, and then he'll just get off, which is exactly what happened.
Jeez.
But, you know, it's just like, whoops.
Oh
And
my
then
goodness.
and then okay, so he's, I guess, a Gemini because his birthday is May 26th, and that's when the new moon in Gemini is coming. He does not strike me as a Gemini at all. So I have to really look at his chart. He's quiet. He's, just, anyway. He then, in the middle of the night, like the next day, sends his mother a text message that says SOS, and that's it.
Oh
And she
gosh.
was freaking out for 2 days trying to get in touch with us.
Oh no.
So little
Oh
See,
instant.
and
no.
that's the problem with a lack of communication, not talking enough
Yeah,
and
exactly. Well,
explaining
he did it
things.
on purpose, he did it
Yeah.
on purpose. He's like, I'm gonna get my mom, blah blah blah. But
Oh
it was
no.
it was all fine, turned out fine.
Not,
So
not a very nice thing to
I
do.
know, I know.
Um, yeah, so I think another thing that I was thinking about too with the lovers was and because I do these new moon circles in the symposium, I've been really liking the idea of using like two of the tarot cards that are associated with the planet and the zodiac sign, and looking at them and saying, how do they work together, or how can they work together for us for this new lunar cycle, and the magician is the tarot card for Mercury. And I really liked thinking about how the magician is all about, he's the manifester, right? The great manifester, taking what the thoughts, your ideas, all of that information that's up here as above, and manifesting it, putting it out into the world, taking that action and utilizing the tools that you have around, the tools on that table that you see in pretty much every magician, not every, but in most magician cards, you'll see that there are their tools, and using those tools. And the lovers, in connection with that, you know, being more about, and I'm going to go back to the duality again of just saying, like, am I making a choice to do something that's in alignment with my true self, with what I want to be? Am I really making sure that these things that um, I'm doing because they're really going to not benefit me, but they're going to really truly making me happy? Am I making like aligned choices with my actions? I mean, there's so much more to explore with the two cards. Um, and I only really just started thinking about the magician and the lovers together. And I just thought it was like, oh, like I guess I wouldn't have thought about that so much if I had not been thinking about this new moon in Gemini. I don't think I would have thought so much about the two cards together.
I like that.
Yeah,
I like
I like
the,
that the
go ahead.
because I'm looking at this new deck that I got, which was in the mail. I ordered it before I left, and it was in the mail, and it's the Desert Illuminations Tarot, and I have absolutely fallen in love with it because it is so Southwest, and the magician is an alien,
Oh,
and the lovers are Calamity Jane and Wild Bill Hickok.
oh my God, I
I
love that.
mean, the colors are amazing. The vibe is amazing. It just makes me happy to look at these. And they're very Southwest. There's a lot of Kachina, there's a lot of Native American symbolism, there's a lot of the mountains and the desert and the cactus. It's just so fun. And the deck is really cool because it's got a turquoise, the edges are turquoise, the back of it is these eyes, which I love. And
Oh,
it's just gorgeous. The colors are so pretty. And one of the things that I always think about with the lovers, or I have begun to think about with the lovers because it's not been my favorite card at all, is it's it's not really about relationships so much as how you show up to be available for love. How do you accept love, and the choices that you make that bring you the kind of love or relationships or whatever that you want, that are beneficial, as you said, beneficial to you. Because so many times I think people just want to be in a relationship that they accept something that's not really good for them just because they want to be a couple. And I feel like that if people were more discerning and people valued themselves, and by people I tend to think of women, valued themselves more and considered themselves to be a gift to someone, that they wouldn't give themselves to someone who would take that gift and stomp it on the ground and throw it in the trash, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big part of the Lovers, and the Magician comes in there and kind of like can say, that's what I want. That's what I want to manifest, that kind of relationship. And that's where I'm going to put my magic powers towards. And I'm not going to take anything less than that.
Yeah. I really like that because it's keeping yourself you in a relationship and not
Right.
conceding to other people's, wants, desires, and wishes because you may feel like, oh, well, I am supposed to do a lot of compromising. I'm supposed to, give them because if I give them what they want, they're going to be very happy and then they're going to show me. And then you lose who you really are in all of that. And
Right.
then the magician, in that sense, if you're thinking about using the magician as a means to manifest it, a shadowy side could be that you're manifesting the wrong thing, that you're not
Yeah.
truly in alignment with what you want, and then you're going to manifest something that you may think or society may tell you should do, but it goes against everything that you
Right.
believe or want for yourself.
Right. And it's like instead of saying, working from your inside and saying this is what I want from my ends, it's like you're trying to placate somebody else because they're mad about something and they're blaming it on you when it's not your fault at all. It's their idiocy, their insecurity, their whatever their thing is that they won't look at, that they won't work on, and they put it on you. And so you try to placate them. And the more you try to placate them, the more they are that way
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
because
I feel
stomping on
like,
you is what's making them feel good.
right. I feel like the magician is when they're aligned is really good at asking for the right thing, for the right thing instead of being super specific of I want that person, that one right there, and this is how I want it to happen. I want it, the more you try to micromanage the universe, I mean, a lot of the time you're going to get exactly what you ask for, and then
Yeah.
you're going to go, whoops.
When I separated from my second husband, and I was trying to recover from all that, and he was, then he passed away. Um, I started to think, maybe I want another relationship. I was younger, now I'll be like, "Eh." But I was younger, and I finally came to the conclusion because I was starting to come out. I didn't know what was what, and I just said, okay, here's the deal. I don't care if it's a man or a woman. All I want is for someone to be as crazy about me as I am about them. And that happened. The relationship that I had, which was it's been now 10 years since it ended, which doesn't even seem possible, but it was basically a 10-year honeymoon that sort of went downhill for a couple of years until it ended. And there are no guarantees. There are no guarantees in life that anybody that you are with, you're going to be with forever, whether you get divorced or whether somebody passes away, you just don't know. But the majority of that relationship was really good. And so I'm grateful for that. And, for a long time, we were equally crazy about each other. And that was nice. And that's what I asked for. So I got it, at least for a little while.
Yeah, yeah. I've uh, had the same experience where, or I guess it's different. Yeah, I'm an Aquarius, and so I like to micromanage. I would like to control everything if I could. And there have been a few times when I've insisted on things being a certain way, and so it's kind of like, okay, well, then here's the version of that you get right now, and then it
Yeah.
was not. I was like, oh, okay, I'm supposed to learn how to be patient.
Yeah.
So I've been working a little bit more with the surrendering to, the flow of life instead
Yeah.
of always jumping out of the boat and swimming against the current.
Conversation about that, kind of had a conversation about that with one of my Gemini friends, because she's in a situation where there's a person that she's trying to help, and this person is not, because of a lot of different reasons, not able to like follow multiple step commands or multiple step instructions or suggestions. And I've had this conversation. It's like when I was a paralegal and dealing with people who had either a brain injury or drug addiction, and they cannot, it's not that they're trying to do it to frustrate you. It's that they physically and physiologically cannot follow. You cannot tell them, go down the stairs into the kitchen to the refrigerator on the second shelf and get me whatever. They can't do that. Go down the stairs. Okay, I'm down the stairs. Now what? Go into the kitchen. Okay, I'm in the kitchen. Now what? Go to the refrigerator. Okay, I'm in the
Yep.
refrigerator. Now what? Open the door. One at a time, one step at a time. And that's has been very frustrating for her, because you think people are doing it to annoy you, because everybody should be able to do that kind of thing, but they can't. They just physically can't. And so we've had a lot of conversations around that.
Hmm.
And I think too, when you think about relationships, right? And when we're young, we have maybe an idealized
Yeah.
idea, like an idealized image of what a relationship looks like, and your priorities when you're younger, and as you become wiser in your years, your priorities change. But I think something like an invitation from the magician and the lovers, could be that you need to be focused on the relationship. You need to be focused on what is it that I need from this relationship, and what is it that my partner needs from the relationship. Because you need to think about, well, in order for me to be happy, right, I have to follow what it is that I think is going to make me happy. But it's also, I want to make sure that I'm doing what I can as well to make my partner happen, almost like this giving and receiving. When you think about the sixes in tarot, it's a lot of giving and receiving, keeping things in balance, keeping things harmonized. And the only way that you can maintain harmony is if you can balance them, and you can't do that in a relationship only thinking about yourself.
Oh,
You also
absolutely.
have to take
Absolutely.
into consideration the other person, and part of that is also learning about the other person, right? Like
Yeah.
what, like in your situation that you were talking about, Linda, having an understanding of maybe why this person is doing it, and researching and going out and getting that information, could have been very helpful in how can I now navigate this relationship having this information. So there's a
Right.
lot that goes into maintaining relationships, but I think life just gets so lifey, life gets so busy, it gets so stressful, it can be very like anxiety ridden that we tend to lose sight of, well, I need to come back. I need to come back to me, and I need to come back to this relationship, and we need to maybe put a little bit more time and energy into understanding each other so that
Mhm.
we can work together as a whole. It's
That's
like
so
there.
true. And the other thing is, a lot of times one partner is very willing to do that, and the other partner is not. And communication is great and necessary. Absolutely. I'm never going to disagree with that. But it also requires that both parties they don't have to be absolutely equal, but they have to be willing to try to communicate with each other. And sometimes you get into a situation, either there's something going on that the other party just, maybe it's brought up trauma from the past, who knows, but they just won't communicate to you what is going on and what is wrong. And there's only so many times you can offer to say, look, let's talk about this. And the other, like, you can't make somebody communicate if they don't want to.
Exactly. And then at that point in your life, you have to then go, okay, so I need to think about me now.
Yeah, either
Can
I'm just going to
I,
accept that. I'm just going to
yeah,
accept that this is going to be, the great silence in our relationship, and we'll walk around it. We'll just walk around that elephant every time we walk in the room, or you have to make a choice as to what you're going to do.
yeah. And that's like, again, coming down to the lover, the choices that you make
Right,
in
right.
those relationships are really important because, you ultimately, like you yourself want to be happy.
Hmm.
And you have to do things that are going to make you happy. And like you said, you don't have control over other people. And it's not, I mean, I say these things, but believe me, they are not easy at all.
Yeah.
And I am like a perfect example of that because I will like keep thinking that, oh, the more we talk and the more we share and the more I say something, oh, it's going to work, it's going to work, it's going to work, it's going to work. Like I tend to over um do it. So, like I am nobody to sit here and say I am an expert on this and this is what,
Well, and the other
works,
thing
but
is you can
it's
always you can.
also a matter of not common sense, but a matter of at some point you have to stop yourself and say, what the fuck am I doing?
Well, it's
What
like
am
it's
I
like
doing
that
here?
it's like that book that the Dalai Lama wrote. At some point you just say happiness is a choice. And I'm
Hmm.
Yes.
gonna be happy. I'm just going to be happy. Whether you're happy
Yeah,
or not, I'm going to be happy. And I'm going to be happy
exactly.
in spite of circumstances. Circumstances change. If you wait for circumstances to align themselves for you to be happy, you'll never be happy
Yeah,
because
Yeah.
pack a lunch.
circumstances, they pack a lunch. I love it. They change constantly. And if you think, well, I need this and I need this and I need this to be happy, you may get two out of the three if you're lucky. Sometimes you might get all three for about 15 minutes, but you have to make the choice to just be happy in spite of the circumstances
Also,
because,
Yeah.
you know,
there's a time when everything that you could say has been said, and
yeah,
like you were saying, Kate, I'm not going to waste any more of my energy on this.
yeah. It's like
Yeah,
if you don't want to talk
absolutely.
about it, we're not going to talk about it, and I'm going
A,
to be happy anyway, and with or without you.
a good
And then
thing
the
to ask
other
yourself
thing,
during the new moon in Gemini is, do I listen as much as I talk? And when I listen, am I listening to understand, or am I listening to formulate my answer? Am I
Yes.
willing to sit here with my mouth shut until this person stops talking, even if they're saying something that I don't particularly like about a relationship, that we're trying to have? So,
yeah,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's a tough thing to do
I've
too.
been thinking about that a lot because I think I think and again I don't know women talking because they kind of say you meet somebody, it's standing in line. I was like, so you're standing in line at the post office and you meet somebody and you start to have a chit chat, and they'll say something about something that they did and you'll say, oh yeah, I did something. So you share these stories kind of like to bond, and to say that you and to just it's kind of like a shorthand for how you have a common background in something or a common experience. But the other thing I'm learning is there's a time and a place for that, because when someone is like going through something or someone is talking about their lived experience, and it's a there it's just better to listen to them and not say, oh well, that reminds me of when my grandson did so. Then you're pushing yourself into their story, and so that's not necessarily appropriate, especially if it's not somebody that you know really well. And just listen to what they have to say and to what their experience is, and just try to take that in instead of putting yourself in there. And that can be really hard because we think that we're trying to make a connection by doing that, but what it feels to other people sometimes is that we're trying to take over the conversation, and that's not appropriate.
I'm a notorious oversharer and overtalker. So I try very hard to work
Yeah.
on that
I've noticed that more in myself too, and I'm trying to really not do it.
with varying, I'm having varying degrees of success. It kind of depends on the day.
Yeah,
But you're
definitely.
working on it, both of you, and
Yes,
that's
we're
the
Yeah.
working on
important
it.
part.
We're working on it.
I did want to just say one other thing to the, like the relationship thing. And you made me think about it, Linda, when you were talking about happiness and what happiness means to you. And I know from years, I mean, I did decades of therapy. And one of the things that I learned was that you can be in a relationship with somebody, and it can be anybody, and I'm not talking just a romantic relationship.
Right,
And there are always going to be challenges and issues that the in the relationship that will have to be dealt with, right? Or not dealt with. And one of the things that I was told is to stop yourself and ask, if I continue in this relationship with this issue being there, because I know this other person is maybe not going to make the necessary changes, and that maybe that person can't, maybe that person is not able at that moment to do it. Can I still be in this relationship with this person, knowing that this is happening and be okay with it?
Hmm.
Right? Can I keep this relationship going and not allow this one thing to maybe affect how I think, how I act? Can I just put it in the background and say, you know what? I this is not something that can be dealt with right now. I'm okay because of all these other things that maybe this person has that you love. And I'm
right.
okay. I think I can still be in this relationship with this person and still be happy, and I can deal with that. And those are the questions that you need to ask yourself. And you have to be really honest with yourself about that, because sometimes we'll say, oh, sure, I can handle it. And then later on you find out, oh, maybe I really
Maybe
can't, which is
not.
okay, because
Yeah,
you need to experience it. You need to, almost like it's an experimentation, right? You need to go and do it in order to see if you can. And that's okay to do. And it's okay to think you can and then you can't, and then you try again and you can't, because it's a learning experience. But being honest with yourself, I think, is one of the most important things, is being honest with yourself and not lying to yourself about things
yeah.
because you think something should be a
Yep.
certain way. And I
This
think,
is really interesting because, like I said at the beginning, before we started recording, I had pulled out my moonology deck, and I had pulled out the new moon in Gemini, which is communication is key, and that's what we've been talking about, is communication and talking, and whether people are willing to communicate back or not. But then I kind of just pulled a blind card and got the full moon in Sagittarius. And the full moon in Sagittarius says, look at the bigger picture, just like what you were
Mhm.
saying. And sometimes I think when you're in that Gemini energy of, it's kind of like what's that movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once?
Yeah.
And you're looking at all these things that you get focused on the minutia, and you kind of have to pull back and you say, okay, yes, I'm stuck right now in this thing, what you were just saying, Kate, this particular situation that is bothering me. But when I pull back and look at the bigger picture of the relationship as a whole, sibling, friend, partner, whatever it is the relationship as a whole big enough, good enough for me to just put that in the closet for a minute and we just go on with the relationship? And I think, sometimes when you get into that whirling mode of whatever it is, you can just pull back and look at the whole thing, just like when you look at that classic picture of the world taken from the spaceship. It's beautiful and serene and lovely, and we're not focusing in on things like Gaza and Africa, and it's there, but right now we're looking at the beauty of the world from a distance, and sometimes you have to do that.
Yeah, I love that connection. That was very beautifully connected and beautifully said.
Yeah, I was just like, wow, that makes perfect sense, and I pulled a card for it too. How about that?
Speaking
Thanks for
of
how that
pulling
worked out.
cards, do we want to do something? Does anybody have any thoughts or
Um,
ideas?
Well, we could each pull a card to guide us on how to blend the energies of uh, the magician and the lovers.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
think that's a great idea.
I like that idea.
Alrighty. I'm going to
All
shuffle here.
right.
I'm just using my handy,
Oh, and
my
I
little
have to say this
earbud.
deck, it shuffles so nicely.
That is
It
so great. It's such
it
a pretty deck.
shuffles so I'm so happy with it. I'm just like, ah.
I'm so glad I was waiting for you when you got home. It was like a little
I
welcome home gift from
I know
yourself.
and it was funny because it was Eli's one of his friends had driven by and they had not held it. They put it at the door. And so he's like, "Oh, I better go rescue that." So
Okay,
he
this is
rescued it for me.
okay. Well, I pulled for how the magician and the lovers can work together. I pulled the Eight of Swords.
Oh,
So,
that's a card that was put as the one of the cards for this moon, for this new moon.
oh, interesting. Um, this is we were speaking earlier about the magician knows how to ask for the right thing, and I think that maybe these eight swords are choices that you've made that you don't maybe realize or want to admit were your choices in this case. Um, it's not always. Sometimes you are put there by someone else, and if that's the case, you don't need a tarot reading. You need help, um,
Yeah.
real help. But this is I think the magician would tell you, okay, well, you're kind of stuck right now, so you really need to think about prioritize what's the first thing you need to what's your first barrier that you need to overcome. Maybe you need to get your hands on out of those um binds if you can, because luckily in the traditional Eight of Swords, the person is, they're tangled up there, but it doesn't look really tight or restrictive. Like if she wiggles around a little and
Yeah.
stays calm and figures her way out of this with her mind, like the magician uses their mind first, right? That's their biggest tool. How do I want to put all of this together? So if she's careful and she does one thing at a time, overcomes one thing at a time, eventually she'll get to that point in the lover's card where, okay, the choices are all laid out here and everything is kind of open and I'm not tied up anymore. And I can just sort of take a breath and a moment and allow myself to be vulnerable to life again, get some
Mhm.
insight from my higher self that was probably telling me, stop it. All of these times I was sticking these swords in the ground around myself saying, yes, this is a great decision. So
Maybe not.
yeah, maybe not. Maybe I could have listened, and it's a good chance to after you get yourself untangled there
Yeah.
to just sort of maybe sit and do a little post game reflection,
Yeah.
kind of look back over your choices, see where maybe you could have made some better
Yeah.
decisions.
Yeah. Could
So
have just ignored. Could have not put that sword there. Could have just left that one alone.
right. But that's my take on how I would start to work with the magician and the lovers together.
Well, I pulled the six of cactus. So cactus in this deck is pentacles because it shows little cactus discs,
Okay,
cactus
cool.
buds kind of thing. And so the card is very similar to, it's set up like the Rider Waite, but instead of a rich person, it's an alien who has come down to these cowboys that are kind of sitting around and then handing them these cactus discs. And there's a little spaceship. And all the cactus, the aliens are the figures in the cactus suit. And in all of them, there's a little spaceship, sometimes more than one. But the over in the book, the meaning of that is to acknowledge that the unknown and the unseen are all around, and sometimes if we have to kind of open our eyes to that. And
Oh, I love that.
the thing about the Six of Pentacles, which is can be kind of almost like a two-edged sword, bringing the swords in. It's a balance between giving and receiving. And I think in relationships, um, people tend to be, I think we can get caught in that, oh, I have to give this person what they need, or I have to do what, make them happy or do what they need me to do. And I think sometimes we forget that we need things too. And we are allowed to ask for what we need. And the magician would say, you won't get what you need unless you ask for it. The universe is very generous, but it's not necessarily telepathic. And so is your partner or your friend, or they don't know what you want or what you unless you tell them. And so I think in this case, this alien person is being very generous, but at the same time, maybe they're getting something that they don't necessarily need. It's not necessarily what they want. And so again, how to show up? How do we show up to get the love that we need? We have to be communicative. We have to be say, I want this, I need this, I need you to do this, or not. It's just as equality or equitable. And so yeah, I think there's another fun thing about this is on the movie, on the plane over, they had all these movies, and I watched one of my favorite movies that I hadn't seen in a while called Cowboys and Aliens.
Uh-huh.
And I
I think
don't
I
know if
saw
you've
that.
ever seen that. I love that movie. And so yeah, that just made me giggle when I saw this.
And I love that too, Linda, because it's also like asking for what you want, but also listening, truly listening to what the other person in the relationship wants and needs as
Right,
well.
because you're the giver. If you're the giver in this, you want to give someone something that they will use or that is something they need. It's like,
Or even
if
just
somebody
something that
says to
they
you,
really want.
what do you want for your birthday? And you say, I don't really care about things, and you can give me gift certificate to a movie or gift certificate to a bookstore. I love to read, I love movies, blah blah blah. And then they give you some weird thing, and it's just like, you didn't listen to anything, you didn't pay attention to you're not paying attention to me, what I like, what I look at what I do.
Mm.
And then you give me a fishing pole. I don't go fishing. Why would
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of make sure you're giving your partner or your friend, whoever you're in relationship with here, something that they want and not just something that you want them to want.
Right,
It's
exactly.
like the
Exactly.
guy that gives his wife a new bowling ball for her
Yeah,
birthday,
right,
and
because he
he's
wants her
like,
to
"Oh,
go
it's too
bowling
heavy
with
for
him.
you. You don't like it." So now I have a new bowling ball. You know what I mean? But
Yeah,
Yeah, it's being very conscientious of what the other person wants and needs and
yeah,
taking that into consideration because that's the giving and taking.
yeah.
So my card was judgment. Ooh.
Ooh.
Um, and I am using the Light Seers deck. And I really think this is a beautiful interpretation of judgment. And it's a woman who is looking up at the sky, and she has her arms perpendicular in like a 90-degree angle in front of her. She's looking up, and there, what looks like to be her spirit is rising, right? And that makes me think of the when we let go of our judgments about ourselves and others, it sets us free.
Mm,
And it sets us free from carrying burdens and weights and weight and holding us down, right? Because that's what judgment does. When you are when you're very judging of others or judging of yourself, it kind of puts you in this very negative space, right? So if we talk about energies, it's not a very good energy to be around.
Yeah.
Then you become very negative in your thoughts, in your thinking, in your ideas. And it's not a good thing to do when you're in a relationship with other people. Um, because that can really cause a lot of issues in a relationship, and I think with the judgment, the magician saying, okay, maybe you're being very judgy in this relationship, so maybe you need to like stop. Maybe you need to put a little bit more thought into these tools that you're using. Maybe let's take that sword, like what's going on with your thinking? Why do you feel this way or think this way about something? Right? And maybe you need those cups. Like, what are the emotions that are going on here? Because usually you have when you're judgy or you accuse people or you think things in a negative way, it usually stems from some kind of emotional attachment to something that happened to you, maybe in your past, that you kind of hold on to and it makes you feel a certain way, right? So it's this idea of the magician saying, hey, let's look at all of the things that are going on with you and what might be contributing um, to these judgments that you have. And then the lover is kind of comes in and says, okay, so you have some choices here, like if you understand maybe why you're judging your partner for this one particular issue, then what are you going to do to kind of help you set that free, like to finally just like let it go and come to terms with it and deal with it, because if you do, it's going to make things that much better in your relationship, and it's going to make you a happier person. Um, and I know this all from experience because I was a judgy person. And and I'm grateful for my family, like my sister and my brother, because we're very honest with each other. And, I know that I was, and they have told me that I was. And I worked through that, thank goodness, with lots and lots of therapy. But, coming to this understanding that there's a reason why you judge others, and understanding why that might be, and giving yourself the tools to help you release it and let it go, which is kind of that job of the magician
Yep.
there to do, enables you to make better choices about what you're going to do in those relationships, and kind of taking that path to, fulfilling this meeting your true self, right? Living the life that you want to live. Ultimately, we all want to be happy, right? We
And
all
I
want to
think I
have
think
peace in our life.
there's a there's judgment and judgment, okay? Because there's the judgment of, like you were talking about, of being judgy and being critical. Maybe critical is a better than judgment, or of people. But there's also, you need to be able to use and trust your own judgment and your own
Hmm.
discernment. If you feel like things are out of kilter in a relationship, or something is happening and it's sliding on a certain, you need to trust that, and not let other people try to say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, or it's not that way, or whatever, and go into the gaslighting thing. But I think you're right, and I think people who have a lot of judgments about other people's behavior, or other people's appearances, or other people's anything, I think there's a great amount of fear involved in that, because it's like, I'm so afraid if I step out of line that I'm going to be judged, or I'm going to be wrong,
Hmm.
that I have to make sure everybody else lives up to these narrow standards that I'm in. And if they don't, then they're just like, whatever.
Yeah, and I think about myself and how I was always very worried about doing things from a creative standpoint, right, for myself because I was always afraid about how others were going to judge me. This whole podcast thing here, if you got me like 3 years ago, I would have been like, hell no, there is no way that I am going to speak out there for people to hear. They're going to judge me. They're going to, oh, who is this woman? Who does she think she is? And you know what? It took me, years to come to terms with, you know what? If you don't like what I'm saying, you have that right,
Yeah, and
but I'm
there's a
not going to
thousand other
allow.
podcasts you can go listen to if you don't want to listen to
Yes,
this one.
and
It's
I'm not going to
okay.
allow other people's judgment about me to stop doing something that I truly feel very passionate about and something that I feel can help other people with just everyday life, and this is not for everybody, and I respect that. And if you don't like what I'm saying or you don't agree with what I'm saying, you have every right for that too,
Yeah.
and that's okay. I'm okay with that. But that took me a really, really long time to be able to feel comfortable in saying that and being able to carry out and do the things that I have been wanting to do for a while now. And I still have work to do on that because let me tell you, I got lots of creative ideas that I would love to do, but I have some apprehension about them and I have to
Well,
like work it
I think
through.
as we get older, I still think sometimes when I leave the house or when I go somewhere, it's like, oh, what are they gonna think? And so then I say to myself, you know what? I'm an old woman. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. They might, you might walk in the door. When you walk in the door, someplace people turn around and look at you because somebody walked in the room. And if that caught your attention, it's like they're not going to look at me. They don't care. And that phrase, other people's opinions of me are not my business, that is the most liberating thing. It's like what you think about me is not my business. It's not my business.
Yeah, I was going to
I'm
say,
going to go about my business and take care of what I need to take care of, and whatever you think about it doesn't make any difference.
that, healthy judgment means that you understand some things are just none of your damn business. Like
Right.
you're feeling judgmental about it, it's because of some, whatever
Some
you're judging
bizarre
someone else
something.
for in a
And
in a
I would just
negative
like
way.
to let our listeners know that all three of us today are wearing purple.
I didn't even notice that. Good observation.
I'm wearing light and
Double
dark.
purple.
Oh, wait a second. Isn't purple related to like your crown chakra or your
Yeah,
Yeah,
I know it's a sign of royalty, but isn't it also a
yeah,
sign of
yeah.
like
it's the
You
violet, the
can
fire?
violet
see the
crown.
violet if you can either. I've heard it interpreted as being very violet or like a bright white, but I like violet.
I like the violet myself too.
We didn't
Anyway,
coordinate
this,
our outfits before starting the
yes.
podcast that no one can see us on.
Oh, very true, very true. So I did just want to say, since this is an episode on the new moon in Gemini, for our listeners to kind of think like we discussed quite a bit, and maybe we had a general theme to this podcast, but how might you use the energies of Gemini or the energies of the lover or the energies of the magician, to work on like how can you take those energies, and apply them to what is going on in your life right now, just kind of like what we were talking about, and using that energy throughout the month, um to kind of help guide you, and even
Right.
pulling cards to them like we did now, right? Like take out your magician and your lover's card, put them out in front of you, look at them, like what messages are you receiving from those cards, and then how might you use those energies, and then pull other cards, and combine the energies just like we were doing here. It's a great way to like play around,
It
with
really
with
is.
the cards.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really
To get
is.
some perspective, a different perspective on, that was actually a very good pull for me because I've had several realizations over this waning from the Scorpio full moon to like some really deep things that I thought maybe I had licked and, that's when you know you're in trouble. When you think you got something figured out.
When you
But
think you've got it figured out,
yeah, but it's, that can be a scary card sometimes. And like I said, if you are in a position, a scary position like that, and you didn't put yourself there, then please don't just pull cards.
yeah,
Ask for
yeah.
help and get an extraction team in there, because there's nothing wrong with asking for help. But no, this poll here was definitely tarot saying, all of these things, you probably, if you'd have paid a little closer attention, maybe wouldn't have happened. So
Use that judgment. Use that
yeah,
judgment.
so that's what
There
I'm
you go. There you go. Well, this was a wonderful episode once again. So thank you to our listeners for joining us, and I hope you guys have a wonderful new moon in Gemini. And please leave a comment on any insights that you may have received or anything that you might want to work on for this lunar cycle. We'd appreciate hearing from you all.
We'll see you soon.
Bye, guys.